Welcome to the SOGI News Desk. I'm Brad Wilder. Today on the show, we bring with us a professional therapist who's worked with survivors, troubled teens, and even sex predators for over 30 years. His knowledge is, well, extensive to say the least. He provides some great insight into today's show on how, where, when, why, what, and every other question you could possibly imagine as to how this all transpired and started. He's also our lead clinical mental health professional with the SOGI 123 Taskforce. Now, Jon Uhler is a clinical professional who brings with him all of this experience and knowledge, and we're happy to have him on the show today. Jon is going to take a look through some charts with us that is going to really depict and outline where this comes from, where it's transitioned to, and where we are today, and what we as concerned parents, grandparents, citizens can possibly do to help with not only educating ourselves more about this issue, but also, how to get involved, how to stay active and become active, for that matter. So let's welcome Jon to the show. Hi, Jon. Thanks for being here today.
Brad, thank you for having me. Thank you for being our news desk. The voice and the face of the SOGI 123 International Taskforce. And it's my pleasure to be a part of the SOGI 123 International Taskforce. I'm excited to be able to put together, along with so many good people behind the scenes, a resource that will really be and is a one-of-a-kind resource for parents to protect their kids and really to take back their schools from this agenda that has been spreading like wildfire, the agenda of the trans movement, what I call the trans deception, but it is really setting kids up to be put on the pathway to medically have their sex changed. They call it transition, but it's sex change. And so we are very concerned, and the SOGI 123 International Task Force is here as really, I believe, the ultimate resource. We have very powerful resources, as well as people behind the scenes and those of us in the clinical fields that can assist, and we are bringing our efforts to bear collectively in the task force.
And that's fantastic, because that's that brings credibility to everything that we're trying to do. And there's been a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses who have had to not necessarily do the wrong thing or the right thing, but they've been silenced. And it's good to see that this particular topic, unlike the COVID topic, there's a silencing that isn't happening in the field of the clinical aspect of it, because it really is a mental health situation. And I've heard you mention that many times, and obviously the professionals that the SOGI International Task Force is bringing on is also doing the same thing, which is being concerned about the mental health aspect of this whole thing, because it's more than just some coercion, some intimidation, or even some extortion. Those are the criminal aspects of it, but the whole in-depth part of really, I guess, what this trans movement is about becomes a psyop, which again is part of this all. So that's where therapists and clinical, people who have the know-how and the knowledge, that's why we're here. We're trying to let those people do the talking for us. We have to somehow have the public understand and get educated as to what's really going on with this. And that's again why we've selected you as our international lead with regards to the mental health professionals that we'll bring in. And you're just doing a fantastic job, and we can't say enough about you, Jon.
Thanks.
So where do we go from here, John? We've got some great charts to go through today. We've got a little bit of a breakdown, obviously, on how this all came to be and where it's headed and where it is now. Where would you like to start, sir?
Well, Brad, again, I'm excited for what the task force can do for parents. I thought a good place for us to start is an overview. We have a couple of approaches we can take to help people understand that what they have been told and really what they have been fed in terms of a narrative has been false. That there are trans kids, that there is such a thing as a trans movement. There actually is not. Now, let me qualify that before I lose my audience. Oh, it's a real thing. That's why we all have heard of this trans movement and non-binary stuff. But it is not natural. It is contrived. If somebody can make that shift, because there's been such an effective marketing tactic that we have now come to accept something that is actually not real, but now it's become very real. So I thought we would look at what are the special interests. So we really have two things as far as a big picture overview. One is, where did this come from? And I can tell you, prior to the year 2005, none of this existed. That needs to, a parent, any good person needs to allow that to sink in. Then the question is, well, where did this come from and why? This came from certain individuals, certain special interests that have worked independently and then in concert with one another to move certain agendas. Now, somebody will say, oh, conspiracy theory. No, conspiracy is people just working behind the scenes to get something done. And so I thought we would take a moment to allow parents or others to see and really connect the dots. Who's behind this? Why would they have such a vested interest in creating such a narrative, even to the point of getting it into schools? What do they have at stake? Why are they doing this? And so I thought we would take this first segment that you and I are working together here and help people begin to see that there really are special interests that are either coordinating amongst themselves or happy to kind of climb on the bandwagon because they all have something in common, which is really this: financial benefit or sexual benefit.
Yeah, this industry seems to be worth about $3 trillion a year, and it's definitely well financed now.
That's right. If someone wants to really look at some of the, and we'll talk about foundations and those with deep pockets, I recommend the 11th Hour blog by Jennifer Billick. She has done a tremendous job looking at who's been funding this thing, not just governments, but very large foundations. One is the ARC Foundation. We'll talk about that. But Jennifer Billick's work, the 11th Hour blog, that'll save us time. If you want to go and look at who's been funding this, that's an excellent source.
Excellent. So we'll get to some of that in a bit. Obviously, we've got some different charts to pull up today. One of the charts that you have that you want to show everybody is going to kind of point it all in a direction where and how and why. So maybe we can jump into that real quick if you want to pull that.
Well, let's do it, because this really hopefully will begin to help people understand who are the players. Again, where did the trans movement come from? Didn't exist prior to 2005. You have the greatest collection, I call them jackals, that are feeding off the carcasses. They're feeding off these kids. And so this chart is my attempt at helping people understand that it's not just an organic movement. There's a lot of special interests. We'll just start. I'm going to start in the upper left, maybe 11 o'clock. We'll start with the green, and we're going to move clockwise.
So do you want to screen share that for everyone?
Sure. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm staring at it. I didn't realize.
Yeah, we can screen share that in, and that'll kind of dial everyone up.
Okay. Let me go into, I don't have it ready, but that's fine. Let me
No,
do
that's
this.
okay. We can.
Okay. So this is actually my show prep because I do a counseling show. So let me find.
So on the screen right now, as John's getting prepared, I actually have the two images that we'll be looking at today.
Can you bring that up on your end?
Yeah,
Brad?
but you still go ahead and finish off bringing it up on your end, John, and we'll do that screen share. But these are some of the different things that we're going to break down here today with John, is obviously how that works from the provincial and government aspect of things to how Pornhub is even involved in this whole movement at this time.
There we go.
So,
hey, you know
John
what?
pulls,
Let's start with. Do you have the chart, Brad? Are we all seeing
no,
this?
I want you to pull up the chart on your screen there, John. Go ahead and screen share that chart. And
Okay, I have. It appears like I'm sharing it. Is that true?
Not yet. I don't see it. No, sir.
Okay, it says I'm screen sharing. Let's see here.
I have a screen share of everything that you. It's like your browser.
Okay, let me do this. This is too funny. Not funny. You can tell technologically, I'm still in my infancy. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then I'm going to go back. Sorry.
So there now, yeah, I've got a picture of you. Perfect.
Okay. Now let me see if I can. Did it bring up the chart?
Yes, sir, it did. There we go.
There we go.
Are in.
Okay, so I'm a better clinician than I am a tech guy. Okay, so what we have, you know what, we'll start with Big Pharma simply because it's circled. This actually comes from a video I did called Understanding the Trans Movement. Okay, so since this one is circled, but in the video that circle actually goes clockwise. So since it's circled, let's start there. Big Pharma. Big Pharma has a huge special interest because without Big Pharma, you have no puberty blockers, you have no cross-sex hormones. Once a child enters onto the moving sidewalk of the trans movement, they will start to become a patient for life. So Big Pharma has a huge vested interest. It's a customer for life. Big Medical and doctors and hospitals. So who prescribes all of this? The doctors. Who performs the surgeries? Big Medical. This is going to apply when we show practically the other chart. Okay, so if I'm going to make money off these kids, and by the way, without the DSM-5 published in 2013, you could not bill for any quote unquote transgender services. So this is big money. Okay, so Big Pharma has a vested interest because now you have a customer base for life. That's pretty good. There aren't many industries that you have a customer for life because to maintain this delusion and maintain an artificial state, for instance, boys that get castrated and have a vagina drilled into them, they call that bottom surgery for boys. That really is a wound. And the body will try to close that up. So in order to maintain a girl looking like a boy and then a young woman looking like a young man and eventually a woman looking like a man and vice versa, you have to do it artificially because if you stop taking these drugs, your body reverts to back to what it is. So you have an automatic customer for life. I don't know of many other industries where that is true as much. So Big Medical and doctors, again, they have these kids and these patients coming back month after month to get their injections and to be prescribed, and then also the surgeries. So this is a massive money-making operation, and Big Pharma relies upon that orange square, right? Because they're the ones that are going to prescribe. Now we have the plastic surgeons. So that's where the surgeons come in. Okay, so without the doctors, you aren't going to have the surgeons. So you can see how there's this overlap. They all work in concert. Now you have the transgender medical clinics. Okay, so now we specialize in this. So you can see how they all work together. Planned Parenthood is now, I think, the largest player in the space. And that's very interesting because Planned Parenthood used to be all about women. I say now Planned Parenthood is turning girls into boys and boys into girls. And that's very interesting because the greatest threat to girls and women are men in private spaces that are dressing in drag. So why is it that Planned Parenthood has left women behind by placing women in harm's way of these deviant men that are dressing in drag, that are going in private spaces, including on sports teams, so they can have access to the showers and locker rooms? So Planned Parenthood has left women behind. They've thrown in their lot, as it were, with guys, because they know that more and more teen boys are being pornified, quite frankly. And so there's a massive move towards that. And it takes more drugs consistently to maintain a feminine perspective than a girl, quite frankly. But each are going to be on drugs. Okay, and this is where the next box, the purple box, SOGI Sex Ed. So this is what we're all about, Brad, at the SOGI 123 International Task Force. SOGI, by the way, stands for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. So this is the method of grooming. It all really comes down to this. That's why they push this into the schools, because they have the greatest collection in one place, compulsory, or in a compulsory way, right, to be able to influence these kids. And that's why Planned Parenthood is establishing the clinics, as it were. They're having the medical professionals, and they will, the schools will then transport kids without parental knowledge, not only just for abortions, but now also to get cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. Why would they want a child young? That's eventually where we will talk about sexual predators. Sexual predators want kids young for two reasons. They're all about defiling innocence, and they don't have to worry about a child getting pregnant or a teenager. But if a teenager does, either way, Planned Parenthood is there. So Planned Parenthood is a predator's best friend. Everybody at Planned Parenthood is a mandated reporter, but they never fill out any mandated reports. So they cover for sexual abuse and sex trafficking.
So we could actually call them what they are, which is groomers.
100%. So that purple box is where everything comes down to as far as the methods that are being used. Okay, so that's why we are here to equip parents.
And this is in all the schools. It's not just in a couple of schools. This is now bled into every single school, not only in North America, but almost around the world, John.
Correct. It's all around the world, in the Western world. And let's say these were pieces of a chessboard. I would say this is the queen. Pardon the pun. Okay, this is it, or this is the king. Okay, this is the king. The SOGI Sex Ed, everything, this is the key piece on the board, because this is how you gain access to the greatest amount of kids, to groom them. And grooming is a technical term, but it really simply means this: I'm going to mentally and emotionally influence, I'm going to work a kid. Right? If you go onto a car lot, trust me, you're being groomed by a financial predator. He's going to upsell you into a different vehicle. So he's working you. All grooming means is I'm working someone as a means to an end. So a financial predator is going to financially work someone. A sexual predator is going to work someone to cross their sexual boundaries. But with these special interests, the oranges and the others, you can tell they have a vested interest in getting a kid on pharmaceuticals and being able to have access to their private parts to whack them and hack them off. Well, how are you going to do that? If you walk up to a young person and say, hey, how about I cut your breasts off? They'll look at you and say, I'm going to call the police on you.
Yep.
Well, then how do you get them to willingly lay down on the surgeon's table? You have to, like a cult, you have to do brainwashing. Now, that term has fallen out of favor. So everybody says, we're not brainwashing. So I set that aside. It's the same thing. Brainwashing is mentally and emotionally manipulating someone to where they drink the Kool-Aid. That term came out of Jonestown, out of Guyana, where you had cyanide-laced Kool-Aid that an entire community drank, and mothers fed it to their kids. So hence the term when we say drink the Kool-Aid, that means somebody's been so persuaded that they will consume something poisonous that is not in their best interest. That's what this is.
You know, John, I like to continue to utilize the legal aspect of the word verbiage there and the wording. We're talking extortion, coercion, intimidation, all part of this, and a legal aspect. And that's something that, people who are transitioning back are starting to use those kind of words because they feel those emotions now, knowing what they know.
That's right. And the coercion and manipulation and intimidation, that also really applies to those of us that are going to blow the whistle on this whole thing. Those of us that are going to raise the concerns. So when you have, first of all, these are the special interests. So they have their tactics, meaning how do we get kids onto the moving sidewalk that dumps out eventually on the surgeon's gurney? So there's a method to that madness, so to speak. Now, they're going to ensure that nobody unmasks this ruse, this scheme, this scam. That's where we come in the sense that's what we're doing. We're helping people see this is a scam. Mm-hmm. Well, they're going to silence us then. So how do they do that? Well, their most effective technique, other than just saying that we're hateful, and I really want to call it, we don't hate anybody. We're not phobic. Phobic means you're fearful. I'm not fearful of anything. I've worked in the prison system, right?
That's
what
right.
we are is we're highly concerned. If you're a shepherd and there's a wolf, and you say, hey, I think there's a wolf out there, you're not wolf phobic. You're just very protective. We need to raise the bar on child protection. That's what we are all about. We're not phobic, we're not anti-anything, and we're not talking about what adults do with each other. You go do whatever you want as an adult. I may have my personal opinion. I don't speak about that. Hands off minors. That's what we're talking about. Don't touch minors. Don't influence minors. Don't get in the way. Don't drive a wedge between parents and kids.
So now we talk about the influencing, John, and you're right. That's where the sales and marketing comes in. We saw some stuff in the past week that Balenciaga is one of them. Simmons is another one. They're all starting to get involved now, and we're starting to see. Here in Canada as an example, and you guys have the same thing down there with the FCC, but we have a Canadian Standards Broadcast Council. And with that Broadcast Council, they're responsible for regulating the advertising that goes out over the airwaves. They've also tried to do a little bit of that, obviously, with the internet too, and social media aspects. But Balenciaga is one who came out last week with an ad that was very disturbing, and we're seeing go woke, go broke, and that's exactly what's happening to them at this point. But not only them, there's been others now like Simmons who turned around last week and put together an ad that basically promotes self euthanasia, right? So killing yourself is being supported now, and different companies are stepping up to promote those particular vibes, we'll say. And obviously that's disturbing as well, and it kind of takes us into this next part of the chart here, which is the social and media marketing of it all. And what did you see this past week that led you to bigger concerns about where we're headed just as a society?
That's right. And what I want people again to remember is this: when they think of the trans movement, I want people to understand that it's man-made, it's contrived, it's not real. So it's really effective marketing. Well, who would do this to kids? You boil it down to two overarching special interests: financial predators and sexual predators. That's who you have. And then the third would be those interested in shifting cultural mores for purposes of molding a culture, because you impact a kid's sex and sexuality. Now you have them for life. They will be impacted in a way that they're easily manipulated. So you can actually also end up with what's called useful idiots. And that's not a pejorative term. It just means you then can manipulate a voting bloc. That's very concerning. So you look at how all these trans kids and trans radicals vote, and they vote very socialistic, which benefit who? People at the top. So that's also why up in the top left, the social engineers, there was no coincidence that in the US, when the major cities were burning during the Summer of Love, in each of those cities, you had very large dispensers, clinics of transgender medicine, because you will toy with a kid's sex and sexuality and you affect them cognitively. They're easily manipulated by who? Financial and sexual predators. We found out that the Summer of Love in Portland and Seattle were rife with, we went from BLM to what? Antifa. And Antifa is standing guard now for Drag Queen Story Hour, which are men in women's underwear and drag directly accessing kids. So people need to understand, again, coordination. Through all of this, what you have is, and how are you going to get a kid onto that moving sidewalk? You're going to ultimately influence them emotionally and mentally, and the primary method is pornography. So through all of this, you are going to have an influx of pornography and pornographic ideas and images. That's the thing that greases the skid for all of this. And that's where the porn industry comes in. Brad, you just mentioned about the things that are being uncovered as far as potential of sex trafficking. Look over on the green then. You have sexual predators and pedophiles. So there's an overlap with all of these, because if I'm a pimp, you see kind of maybe the 7 o'clock box there, pimps and human traffickers. It is no accident that within the SOGI sex ed material that we are against, and within the social media stuff, OnlyFans, you have this suggestion to these impressionable kids who now have become so brainwashed as to, they're dying to have their breasts removed, these poor girls, right? Literally, they're being manipulated. And so because the surgeons won't discount their rates, very interesting, they're making a killing off of this. The kids are told this, well, why don't you try prostitution for a while to go earn money? This is the same crowd, the SOGI sex ed, are the same groups that are in favor of legalizing prostitution. And that ultimately is done at the legislative level. Go up to the first olive green 9 o'clock box. Why is it that these groups all vote or push to have certain votes on certain issues, such as prostitution, men in private spaces, men in women's prisons? It's all part of the same agenda. Ultimately, they call it transgender medicine, right? You're going to influence kids. You're going to make them customers for life. You dumb down their boundaries. Now you can manipulate them, and they're ripe for customer for life. So there's the financial predators, and then being sexually groomed and then exploited. And the ultimate exploitation is, of course, being pimped out. So it all comes down to the 3 o'clock purple box. Again, you have access to the largest group of kids, which are the public schools and also private. So that's why we're so concerned. That's where the grooming takes place. You then shift down to the 4 o'clock purple box, human services, social services, and foster care. It was a great tactic. It's evil, but brilliant tactic that you silence, you like a cult, you wedge your way in between parent and child, and eventually through legislation. Now, if a parent doesn't affirm their child, that parent's going to go to jail, going to lose custody of their kid. And where is that kid placed? With certain selected foster parents. Guess who those foster parents are? Where are they going to take the kid? Well, they still have to also take them per mandate to a therapist. Why? because they want to put the kid on puberty blockers. Well, there's a gatekeeping mechanism. Well, we've screened out any therapist that's going to raise any sort of concern and ultimately ask questions per a mandated reporter. So you've silenced the therapist, and now therapists are now just yes people. So after one session with the therapist gives the approval and the referral to who? To the doctor. And now we have a special pool of therapists, which is man-made contrived, a term that doesn't exist. It's a marketing term called a gender therapist. If you take a kid to a gender therapist, 100% guaranteed, they're going to be fast-tracked into medical and big pharma. Why? Because that's what a gender therapist is. They are the advocates for this. So I guarantee you 100%. Parents, if you're listening, and that's what you need to screen. So a very practical thing we can say is this: screen the therapist. Now, anytime you pass anti-conversion legislation, doesn't that sound interesting? Because who's going to convert my child? It's all contrived. That is a very strategic term. Nobody's converting anybody. If I'm a therapist, you really think I'm here to convert anybody? No, we're here to cause people to rethink and make sure that their decisions are in line with their own values and that they're not being manipulated. But if I am successful in helping a young person think through, or it becomes disclosed, right, that they're being perped on, then I've gotten in the way of that moving sidewalk. And so I have to be silenced. How do you do that? At the threat of civil and criminal punishment, as well as losing my license, because those foster parents or a parent that's trying to fast track a kid, we've got these really personality disordered parents, and some of them could be involved in trafficking kids, that suddenly their goal for their kid is to turn a boy into a girl. And if you have this pesky little therapist who actually has the temerity to say, no kid is born in the wrong body. A girl's a girl, a boy's a boy, and quit focusing on gender stuff. Help a kid move beyond gender like they should, so they build a healthy self-esteem, which is actually helping them understand their competence. But if you focus on this gender stuff, now, and if somebody begins to ask hard questions, like, who introduced you to that? Like, where did you get that idea? And sexual abuse victims will inevitably, especially when they're young, they conclude, the reason I'm being perped on is I'm a girl. I don't want to be a girl anymore. I want to be a boy. So you got to get rid of any therapist that's going to question. So that's where the legislation comes in. Now they have automatic fast tracking. So the human services, social services, foster care is there waiting in the wings for homeless kids, those are the most vulnerable, as well as kids that have been removed from schools, to get them onto that moving sidewalk. Sales and marketing, we're moving along. Brad, do you have any questions thus far? I'll speed it up.
You're doing great. The porn industry seems to be a big part of this as well, and they seem to be something that'll probably never go away now. It became mainstream since the internet started in 97. It's grown since then into where it is today. We've seen a lot of disturbing stuff that comes from the porn industry just over the last, say, 5 to 10 years. It went from, having access to Playboy and Penthouse. Now it's, the deviant stuff that you see online that is at our kids' fingertips every day of the week. And, you mentioned earlier that this porn industry is, again, something that is obviously helping fund and promote and push all of this transgender movement, and again cause and I guess create confusion for kids who just don't understand. I mean, we're in a different time because I'm older, of course, but I can't imagine how confused some kids will be just by seeing things that, we as kids maybe saw a Penthouse or a Playboy lying around, but today it's mind-blowing. You have people that are wearing drag and doing, story time to kids, and you see what they're bringing to that table, and it's just disturbing as for somebody that came from my time frame, right? I guess the porn industry is something that we should probably delve on here just a little bit and talk about that as we work our way around this clock. We still have one more chart to get to, which talks about, the government and the bank and everything else. So let's start again back to the porn industry. What's happening with that, Jon, that you see is really concerning for you and other clinical mental health professionals?
That's right. Porn is the grease that greases the skid of all this. To get a kid onto that moving sidewalk, and that's what I want parents to understand. The trans movement is moving somewhere. At any point in time that a kid gets on, now some will exit, but the vast majority of them, so you won't have on the far end, you won't have as many kids, of course, being dumped out on the gurney, but that's where this leads. Parents need to understand this. This is going somewhere, and there'll be different stages. And the further a kid goes, the more he or she becomes brainwashed until they're willing to have their body parts or asking or dying to have their body parts chopped off. Okay, so there's a method to this. That's where this whole thing goes. And we're saying, get these kids off. The one thing that will cause a kid to get on that is being sexualized. And again, that's where the schools come in. So every predator knows that in order to cross a kid's boundaries, sexual boundaries, you have to get them to lower their inhibitions and to decrease their intuition. How do you do that? Little by little, you introduce concepts to them. You introduce pictures to them. One of the greatest methods of doing that is through animation, through cartoons. The concept or the activity or community called furries. Parents can look up the word furries. Furry deviant art. Okay, furries, think in terms of the most simplistic thing is like Disney, the Fox and the Hound. We have animated characters, and we all are familiar with that. But what deviants do, what predators do, is little by little, they take what is of interest to kids, and now they will begin to introduce sexualized concepts and behaviors and body parts. The shapes we move from foxes to actual foxes that are females with breasts, and now wearing very seductive things. So there's a morphing in front of the child's eyes, little by little. We're introducing sexualized comments or concepts and content. The kid doesn't know it, but a predator knows exactly where they're going with all this, because then we're going to show what the sexualized creatures do, like pup play. So we're going to play at this. That's what parents need to understand, that all men, any man that dresses in drag, you are 100% guaranteed he is into porn. No man thinks it a reasonable thing to dress in women's underwear and drag without being porn saturated. So the men that are accessing kids, and that's important. Drag guys that want to dress in drag that stay with adults, and you have drag queens that are coming out now, like Kitty Demure, that are saying, parents keep kids away from drag, from guys in drag, and drag guys stay away from kids. That's what we're saying. That's all we're saying. Stay away from minors. So drag is what? Drag is pornified. To be a drag star, you have saturated your mind in porn. That's why twerking. What is twerking? It simulates anal penetration. That's all. So it's a pornified idea. And that's why you have the one person bent over and then somebody else coming behind them. So whether it's J-Lo on the Super Bowl doing that, so it's anal penetration or rear entry. So these kids now, how many kids are twerking? We call it twerking, really. What is twerking all about? So it's now become commonplace. So we don't even know how far we've scripted the minds of young people. So nobody's makes a joke of it. Oh, they're just twerking, really. So what used to be, and same thing with 50 Shades of Grey, like choking.
Yeah.
Right? That's sexual assault, quite frankly, when a man chokes a woman. And so the idea of kink, so all that is brought to bear to these kids. So it's all porn. You take pieces of that, and little by little, you're scripting the mind so that when it actually starts happening to these kids, They don't know they're being sexually assaulted. And once you sexually assault a kid, now you have them for life, meaning they're confused. You then can lead them in other directions and begin to get them deeper and deeper into this to where they become a puppet. And so that's where you have the boys that are becoming sexualized through what's called sissy porn. We have videos on our site under the predators. And yeah, that'll show you what happens. So you script the minds of kids, and before you know it, they're saturated in porn, and now they're easy prey for predators. And so boys are being scripted through pornography, and girls, quite frankly, when you look at the trans movement or the trans deception, the majority of the girls that are going into that are seeking a safe haven from sexual predators. They don't know they're running into the arms of more predators. So the girls look at what's going on in the pornography and they say, I can't compete with that, or I don't want to do that. I don't want to be, choked and other things. So I don't want anything to do with that. So the girls are going into the trans movement as a safe haven to run away from sexual predation. They don't realize they're going into the hands of sexual predators, female as well. Think about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, how they would work together. But boys are going into it because they're being sexualized. So again, pornography, either girls are being repelled into the trans movement because of pornography. Boys are being scripted and recruited into the trans movement. They become sexualized and appear sexualized. So porn is behind all of this.
So we bring in the politicians, we bring in the social engineers, we bring in the big foundations and endowments. Obviously, the money is the biggest factor of all of this, besides, what they're doing to our the mental state of our kids, which is obviously, you got to follow the money to break down what the rest is about. If you want to bring yourself back on screen, John, we can maybe look at starting to head into moving to the next chart that we're going to go through here before we wrap up today.
Now, on my end, I don't have that. Should I stop sharing and you can share it on your end? I have it.
Yeah, we could do that, John. Go ahead. You bet.
Let me stop. So I'll rely upon you to show it to the audience. I have it in front of me.
That's great.
This is where the practical part of it, meaning, okay, we've looked at the special interests so that people understand the players and really the influence. But how does this play out? What you could do is you could take now each of these parts and put them in the different color boxes. So you have, this is how it actually plays out. And this comes from a real situation, a recent drag queen story hour that happened in, I believe, Vancouver. A number of our task force folks were there. And so you have right in the middle, you have what was the brochure passed out at a drag queen story hour at a local child's playhouse or a child's activity community location. So kids can go there after school, right? Or they have little theater events. Okay, right. So right in the middle, you have a brochure for an actual event that took place, which was a drag queen story hour. Okay. On the program, if you look at the lower left-hand corner, you have an advertisement for what? A health system. Now, why do you have this advertisement on the program that's handed out at this drag queen story hour? Because where does the moving sidewalk end? So you sexualize kids, and where do the players come from? We're going to see that right in the middle. That comes from, in a way, the colleges. So there's an arts institute. So that's where you have the ICAT. Now that is pertinent to Canada, I believe, University of British Columbia, I believe. Okay, so they have this arts program with these students and these adults who are teaching the college students, instructors. Who are these instructors? Okay, deviant men, quite frankly. That by day they're instructors, by night they're doing drag. Well, where also are they utilizing their talents? They're going to do presentations to kids. So you have this group of people, and you have the coat of arms, sort of the supply chain. Over on the right, These are the players, these are the men that are dressing in women's underwear and drag after watching thousands of hours of porn that are going to do Drag Queen Story Hour. Where do they get their funding? Well, you have banks and you have provincial government. They've created foundations. Different groups have created these foundations to fund and to channel money to where? These different activities. And so you can follow the money, and you look at SOGI 1, 2, 3, and that's what we're fighting in the school system. So these different foundations are funding the methods by which the kids can become scripted, the kids can become brainwashed, they become groomed. So they are now sending and this is just one method, of course, as far as drag queens, but the drag queens are going into schools and churches and libraries. These are the tip of the spear that are introducing sexualized concepts, sexualization to these kids. We're all going to teach kids how to stand up and twerk. We're going to read a story about little Johnny who began to twerk, or Johnny that doesn't want to be Johnny anymore. So again, we're introducing concepts such as you're born in the wrong body. That's a myth. That's a delusion, by the way. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're confusing kids. And if you can get somebody to deny what's right in front of their own eyes, that's what cults do. We used to say it's as obvious as biology 101. That's what's so powerful about getting people to deny what's right in front of their face. They'll drink the Kool-Aid then. So you have kids and parents that don't trust their own intuition, and they're sexualized, so they are ripe for having boundaries crossed by sexual predators who then sexualize the kids, which will then lead to what? They get on the moving sidewalk, and who is there waiting at the other end? Along the way, you have the doctors, and then eventually the surgeon's gurney. These all work in concert. Now, with the boxes on the first chart, do all of them communicate? Probably not, but they're happy to go along because they're going to ride this wave, the wave that started in 2013 with the ability to bill. So the hospitals have a vested interest in getting these kids sexualized and getting them on puberty blockers. If a kid's not sexualized, he'll never be on puberty blockers. So if I can sexualize these kids, lower their inhibitions, now also predators can begin to groom them so that these kids now are saying by the age of 10, they knew they were bisexual. Let that sink in. No child has a sexual thought unless it's introduced to him or her prior to puberty.
They were coerced into that.
They were manipulated. They were sexually offended.
Yeah.
I mean, they were sexually manipulated. They were groomed by sexual predators. They don't know it because the young kids are flattered they're getting all this attention, or somebody's just crossing their boundaries straight up. So the ones that are traumatized are probably not going to be, well, I take that back. A lot of traumatized kids, especially the girls, you'll see self-injurious scars, marks, cutting on a lot of these girls that are going to have their breasts removed. That's signs of sexual trauma. There's 9 red flag key clinical indicators of sexual abuse, and you see it a lot all over these kids, especially the girls. So you can see the players, the special interests then come together, certain ones. Big Pharma, you have the foundations and government, follow the money. Big Pharma doing what? They're working with schools and education. On that previous chart, that's probably 3 o'clock. I would put that under the SOGI Sex Ed. So they're all coming together to do educational, that's what they call it, educational events. And they're getting into schools for education. And what are they educating kids on pornified concepts that dumb down their intuition? They're ripe for sexual predation and now being fast-tracked toward medicalization, which is sterilization and amputation.
Well, you've opened up a world here of knowledge for the parents and the grandparents who need to know. This is part of something that is the beginning. Understanding this and then, tackling each one of these different things on these charts is something that, most parents are going to have to go through if their son or daughter is involved in this. This has become trendy. This has become trendy in a way that kids feel as though it's hip and cool. And, Yeah, for me as a parent, it's disturbing to say the least. I have a lot stronger words that I would love to use, but not in a broadcast situation, obviously. But we need to take back our schools. We need to take back our children's futures. We need to take back humanity. Is the other thing that I believe that is a big part of this. Humanity is being lost, being confused, being manipulated. Becoming a transhuman is something that, that's part of the WEF's future plans for us all. But whether you live androgynously or whether you live as, a normal man or a woman, it becomes disturbing when they start to manipulate. It's no different than, here's $1 million, go get your COVID shot. Way to go. It's the same sort of thing. There's always a reward at the end, and the reward is typically disastrous, whether it was COVID or whether it's this situation. We're seeing a lot of individuals want to transition back from what they've gone through, and that's a heartbreaking story, and we're going to be able to tell that down the road here with some people who are going through that on the SOGI 123 International Task Force news desk. Jon, I want to thank you for being here today. It's always great to have you involved, and all of your knowledge and all of your input is something that a lot of people are learning from now, and thank you very much for being here today and spending time with us.
Brad, it's a pleasure, and it's great to be part of the team.
Great. I look forward to doing more of these, buddy. We'll see you soon, okay?
Thanks.
All right.